Hey everyone, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today is Monday, April 1st. So we're going to be doing the podcast. Now, I do have some news and rumors, but because today is April 1st, take them with a grain of salt. So I'm going to be classifying all reports that I read today as rumors until we get confirmation that they are not April 1st, April Fool's pranks. Um, what I've been watching recently, I had a pretty busy week last week. I watched a lot of movies. Um, Reviews coming soon. First one up, the slasher um mock-you slasher. I'm not sure how you identify it. It's called The Hills Run Red, and it's reminiscent of Scream in that it is a horror fan who is obsessed with slasher movies. Um, but there's a lot more to it than that, and it is gruesome. So definitely going to be talking about that one pretty soon. I watched the late 80s slasher classic question mark American Gothic. I have never heard of this movie before. Um, I've seen the poster on streaming services, Tubi, Shutter, etc. over the years. So I went ahead and gave it a shot. Definitely gonna be talking about that. And then I watched the 80s cheeseball B sci-fi horror classic, cult classic, I'll say, Night of the Comet. Now I have to be upfront. I made an attempt to watch this movie once when I was a kid. Um, my sister rented it, and I didn't get very far into this movie before I was like, you know what, not for me. So this is a fresh watch for me. Um, I also watched another early 80s slasher called The Burning, which is heavily inspired by Friday the 13th. The iconic werewolf um, horror comedy question mark. It was labeled horror comedy, but we'll see. It's called The Howling from I believe 1981, and it is very 1981. And then I watched the vampire flick, more recent than some of these other movies. Um, 30 Days of Night, starring Josh Hartnett. I definitely have some thoughts on this movie as well. Um, so those are some of the movies I watched recently. Reviews will be coming down the road. Let's go ahead and jump into news and rumors. First up, from Bloody Disgusting, a company called Ready Comics Roll has started a Kickstarter campaign for a modern horror tabletop RPG titled What Horrors Lie in Wait. Um, Inspired by and incorporating many of the different subgenres, themes, elements, and tropes of horror over the past several decades, the RPG allows players to recreate their favorite horror movies, video games, and comic books, or create their own tale of terror. It is a rules light RPG, making it easy to pick up, learn, and play for newer tabletop gamers and veterans alike. Um, it will have vampires, werewolves, and other horror creatures. Um, the creators are comparing it to Supernatural as well as Army of Darkness. That's interesting. So that the Kickstarter goes live on April 3rd, which is 2 days from now. Netflix is celebrating 1984. This also comes from Bloody Disgusting. with 40th anniversary collection, which includes the original Nightmare on Elm Street. They're calling it Milestone Movies, the Anniversary Collection. Blah, blah, blah. The 1984 collection includes 2010, The Year We Make Contact, Against All Odds, Amadeus, A Nightmare on Elm Street, A Passage to India, Beverly Hills Cop, Body Double, Conan the Destroyer, Falling in Love, Firestarter, Firstborn, Footloose, Iceman, Joy of Sex, The Killing Fields, Moscow on the Hudson, Mickey and Maud, Places in the Heart, Repo Man, The River, 16 Candles, Starman, and Top Secret. The movies are all live right now. Other collections will be the 1994 collection, the 2004 collection coming later. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so if you have Netflix, there you go. Also from Bloody Disgusting, Festival of the Living Dead trailer. It's a Tubi movie, features the grandchildren of iconic horror characters. So let's see what this is. Directors Jen and Sylvia Soska from American Mary bring you back into the universe of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead with Tubi original Festival of the Living Dead. It will be on Tubi April 5th. It is set decades after Night of the Living Dead, centered on the grandchildren of that film's main character. This is interesting. La di da. 55 years after the incident. Interesting how they're going to handle that. Um, we'll see. Comes out later this week. Coming from Dread Central, they have an interview with John Carpenter where he talks about his 1982 sci-fi horror film The Thing was actually a enormous failure in his own words. So if you want to read the interview, it is on dreadcentral.com right now. But he definitely talks about, how the movie was a letdown and it set his career back. So go check out that interview if you're curious. This one's definitely falling under rumors. Joe Blow is reporting Courtney Cox, Patrick Dempsey, and Nev Campbell possibly returning to Scream 7. Nev Campbell has been confirmed already. Courtney Cox and Patrick Dempsey are rumored at this point, allegedly in talks. All right, they're talking about the controversy, blah, blah, blah. So, still nothing substantial. It sounds like Spyglass is doing everything they can to salvage this movie instead of just, sweeping it under the rug and doing something different. So, we'll see. Also from Joe Blow, it says Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 3 is set to be with a bigger budget, will feature Rabbit, Huffalumps, and Woozles. Interesting. Um, yeah, basically the news is that it's Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 3 is coming and it's going to have a bigger budget and feature more characters. All right. Not really anything else substantial in the report. It's just, background on the movie. This one also comes from Joe Blow. So again, because oh no, this one's from March 27th. So this might not be an April Fool's joke, but I'm still putting it under news and rumors. And the article says new Chucky movie is in development from Don Mancini. And the rumor is that Chucky will go to space, and it will run alongside the Chucky TV series and will be connected to it in some way, allegedly. Um, da Yeah, nothing really substantial. Just that he's working on it, but it's in early stages of development. All right, so let's get into topics. Our first topic is zombie video games. So I've talked about survival horror video games in the past, and some of the early survival horror video games were zombie horror games. The first Resident Evil being the most prominent one. But zombies pop up in other video games. They show up in Call of Duty games, which are first person shooters, as well as Left 4 Dead and Dead Rising, which are decidedly not survival horror games in the strictest sense. Um, so zombies out similar to movies, zombies sort of exist in the video game world as their own franchise, or not franchise, but subgenre. But they also make appearances in other types of video games, just like they sometimes appear in other types of films, even though there is a zombie subgenre. Um, Zombies don't make for very interesting horror movie villains because they're just fucking corpses. They don't make any fucking sense. And I've already talked about previously how much I hate zombies. They're stupid. They don't make any sense, and nobody is going to stand still and let a fucking zombie bite them. So there will never be a zombie apocalypse because people aren't that goddamn brain dead to just stand there and get bit. Um, it just really pisses me off that we're just supposed to believe everybody in the world stop moving so that the zombie could bite them, and that's just bull fucking shit. Um, Now, in a video game, however, I will buy zombies as more interesting villains or characters, monsters, if you will. Partially because video games, it's understood, exist in a separate world from cinema. Video game logic often has, extra lives, super jumps, magic, superpowers, unlimited ammo, shit like that. So like you already go in with an expectation that things aren't realistic. And I know you could also argue the same thing for movies, but zombie movies are often praised allegedly for their realism, which takes me out of the movie because they're not fucking realistic at all. Um, so there's an expectation audiences want zombie movies to be realistic, which they're not. Um, but we don't care if zombie video games are realistic because they're video games. Video games aren't supposed to be realistic, they're supposed to be an exaggeration. I know films are supposed to be an escape, but how can I escape when the entire premise of your film is based on fucking dumbasses just holding their arm and saying, please bite me, Mr. Zombie, when literally that won't fucking happen. Ever. And I'm never going to stop harping on it because um, every zombie movie starts off with one fucking zombie and then that they somehow bite everybody on the planet, and then it turns into hordes of zombies. But there will never be hordes of zombies because you just shoot the fucking first zombie you see. Game over. We're done. We won. Now let's just go back to you know let's just go back to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger. I'm never gonna get. I'm never going to accept the zombie apocalypse as believable in cinema ever. Because it's not fucking believable. Um, but video games, which is what we're here to talk about, zombie video games. I'll buy it just because, um, you know, if a overweight plumber can go down the toilet and end up in the magical mushroom kingdom, where he can grow multiple times his size and break bricks with his bare hands, then I can accept zombies as monsters in video games, just not movies. And I'm gonna die on that hill. That being said, I'm not a fan of zombies in video games, even though I can accept them. More often than not, the game is not fun. In the instance of like Resident Evil or Dead Rising or even Left 4 Dead, you are thrown in the middle of an unrealistic, as I just got done bitching about, zombie apocalypse that has already happened, and you have one fucking shotgun with two shells, and you're supposed to kill the horde of 30 plus zombies walking at you with two goddamn bullets, and you're supposed to, I don't know, escape the horde of zombies. And if you happen to be successful or lucky enough to do so, then you get to go on a scavenger hunt for more ammo. And you spend half the goddamn game counting your fucking bullets in your gun, and the other half of the game looking over your shoulder because you're scared of every fucking twig that breaks. Is it going to be a zombie or is it a fucking cat walking down the alley? I fucking hate zombie video games. They're not fun at all. Every time I would boot up Resident Evil 2 to have fun because everybody insisted it was fun, I'm dead within the first 30 seconds and I'm throwing the controller at the wall saying, fuck this game, I'm out. You gotta give me time to get used to the goddamn controls. You don't just throw me in the middle of a sea of zombies and be like, all right, bitch, see how well you survive. No, like start me off, you know, like Night of the Living Dead. Have me, walking down the street and everything's quiet, and then you see a corpse walking down the alley, and then build it up. Don't just throw me in the middle of a fucking sea of zombies and be like, all right, you got two bullets, good luck. Fuck you. That's why I hate fucking zombie games. And they're all the goddamn same. Every one of them is the goddamn same. Um, Now, Call of Duty, the zombie mode, that's kind of the point. They give you more or less unlimited ammo. And the point is, well, you're trapped. And let's just see how many zombies you can kill and how long you can survive before you run out of ammo because you can't. I guess I shouldn't have said unlimited. I don't know. Is it unlimited ammo? I can't really remember. But anyways, you have to just basically see how long you can survive, which again is just, a race against the clock because they don't fucking stop. There's no end. So to me, there's no goddamn point to it. It's like fucking Tetris. Why play a game that doesn't have an end? Um, Fuck you. So I'm not a fan of the zombie mode in the Call of Duty games either. Which again doesn't make sense because Call of Duty are supposed to be like actual realistic video games. Why do they have zombies in them? I don't fucking know. It just irritates me. Now, if you have a reanimated corpse, which is what a zombie is to most people, in, say, the graveyard of Castlevania, or running around in Maximo, or I don't know, in Gauntlet or Diablo or something like that. All right, I'm down. I'm here for that. You know, because I know there's only so many corpses to go around, so the zombies aren't going to be coming at you in infinite waves of flesh eaters. You're going to get respite in between waves of zombies. And you're going to have, in the case of, like, say, Diablo or Castlevania, you're going to have other monsters to contend with, like tree ants and vampires and werewolves and animated skeletons and ghosts and shit. So you got a little bit more variety. It's just not it's not just hordes of fucking mindless zombies. Which, by the way, if they're mindless, one, how can they see? Two, how can they hear? Three, how can they reason? And four, why are they eating people? I've never understood zombies. Um, you're a corpse. You get reanimated. You have no senses other than fear and the need to feed. And if you have the need to feed, you're going to walk into a garden and start eating vegetables. Or you're going to walk out into a field and start eating cows long before you start eating your cousins. because that's human fucking nature. Just because you're lost all reasoning and your soul allegedly doesn't mean you're just going to turn into a cannibal. That's the other part of zombie movies I don't like, because why are they cannibals? Shouldn't they be eating, I don't know, cows and ducks and chickens and dogs or horses before they turn to humans? If it's just their base instinct, the need to feed, no species ever in the history of ever turned cannibal until it got desperate. Ever. No species eats its own unless it's fucking desperate. It has no choice. But zombies are like, fuck it. It's Monday. Let's go eat George. Let's just, why not? Um, Even when you have games like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, deep cut, but let's go there. Again, it's like, it just doesn't, I'm over it. It doesn't fucking make sense. There's no reason for zombies to be cannibals. There's just no reason for them to be cannibals. It's fucking stupid. It is. It's goddamn dumb. All right. Moving on, because I'm getting my blood pressure up. Let's talk about horror franchises. Horror franchises come in a couple of varieties. You have the film is a success, and so the studios are like, hey, let's make another one. And then they just churn out a bajillion sequels until the audience gets tired of it. Which, sometimes the audience never gets tired, in the case of like Chucky or Saw or Paranormal Activity. They just keep fucking making them. But then you get cases where the audience is like, no, we want more. But the studios are like, no, you don't. And, when it comes to like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, people are like, no, we want more. And the studios are like, no, you don't. No, not happening. Horror franchises, more often than not, are victims of happenstance. They're not planned. It's just the filmmakers, usually indie filmmakers, low budget, with no background. It's usually their first film or one of their first films, early in their career, scrape together enough money and friends and colleagues to pull a horror film out of their ass. And occasionally, uh, it's a hit, and audiences are like, "Oh, I loved it," and studios are like, "Do you want more?" And audiences are like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then we get a bajillion sequels. The other type of horror franchise is rare, where the filmmaker sits down and says, I have an idea for a series, but it won't make a television series, for whatever reason, budget or whatever. I want to do a series of films. Usually in Hollywood, they come in trilogies. Um, this is rare. Off the top of my head, the only instance in horror I can think of where it was designed from the get go to be a trilogy is Scream. And that was an instance of studio meddling, fucking with the program, and then we, got sidetracked and derailed, and shit went down. Unfortunately, Scream 3 can suck it. That movie is rubbish and should never have been made. But even in those cases, again, sometimes the trilogy happens, or the movie gets a direct sequel or whatever, where a movie is supposed to be one movie, but for whatever reason, the studio's like, no, let's make it two because there's too much to do with one movie, or, let's just see how it goes, whatever. That happens a little bit more often than just pre planned trilogies. Um, but again, not as often as just pure dumb luck, you know? But a lot of horror films are designed to be standalone films, and whether they have clout or power or they put their money in or whatever reason, the filmmakers put their foot down and draw a line in the sand and say, no, this is a standalone. It doesn't get a sequel. And we never get a sequel to those movies. Horror franchises can also exist where you have a film that is successful, and it spawns video games and cartoons, kids cartoons, animated Saturday morning programs, and maybe a live action TV spinoff, and comic books, etc. So those are also technically franchises, but that's more like a property, um, than a I guess that's more of a, yeah, than a franchise, but that's another way franchises get born. Um, so let's talk about some of the popular franchises. I'm just going to give a thumbs up or thumbs down based on, is the franchise as a whole any good? Thumbs up. Or is um is the franchise got some okay moments, but as a whole the franchise sucks? Thumbs down. So let's just go through the list. Jaws, that's a thumbs down. The first one is fantastic. The rest of them are rubbish. Um, A Nightmare on Elm Street, that gets a thumbs up because there's really only two of them that I don't like out of the rest of them. And based on audience reception, critical response, and sales, I would say in general horror fans agree with me on that the franchise as a whole is pretty good. Friday the 13th, I'm going to give a thumbs up because, again, even though it's got some hits and misses, it's got more hits than misses, even though some of the misses they really fucking miss. I'm going to give Halloween a thumbs down because I only like 3 of the fucking 13 Halloween movies. That's not enough to balance out the rubbish. Um, the 3 that I like aren't good enough to overcome the ones that I don't like. So as a whole, the Halloween franchise gets a thumbs down for me. Hellraiser, I've only seen the first 4. I loved all 4 of them. I haven't seen the rest, but I'm still going to give it a thumbs up because the first 4 are fan fucking tastic. And even if you look at the math, even if the rest of them suck, the first 4 are too goddamn good. Um, so I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Child's Play, I'm going to give a thumbs up because by and large, as a whole, the franchise is good, even though it has a couple of misses. I'm looking at you, Child's Play 3. Um, Leprechaun, I'm going to give a thumbs down. The first one was entertaining, and that's the best I can give it. The rest of them, not as much. Um, because his books are all loosely interconnected and they do exist in a pseudo shared universe, I'm going to lump all of the Stephen King adaptations as one franchise. And I'm going to give it a thumbs up because, again, even though mathematically you have more misses than hits, when he does get a hit, he knocks it out of the park. It's a fucking home run every time. Even though he gets more, foul balls than he gets, you know, home runs, when he gets a home run, I mean, he fucking, like I said, knocks it out of the park. And usually the bases are loaded, so, like, they score mega big. So, yeah, as a whole, the Stephen King franchise, even though he's got more misses than hits, the hits are make up for the misses. Alien, I'm going to give a thumbs down. I have really only liked 2 of the Alien movies out of all of them. I don't even remember the last 2, Prometheus, Covenant. I know I watched them. I remember watching them, but I don't remember a goddamn thing about them. And I'm pretty sure I didn't like them because if I forgot them, that means they didn't stick in my head, which to me is a sign I probably didn't like them because I don't usually forget movies I liked. What are some other franchises? The George A. Romero Living Dead franchise. I'm going to give that one a thumbs up, even though it's questionable because half the movies in the franchise are remakes of existing movies in the franchise or reimaginings or reinterpretations. I'm still going to give it a thumbs up because I think as a whole, the franchise is fucking awesome. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm also going to give a thumbs up, even though there are, again, some duds. Uh, More often than not, they're hits more than misses. And again, like Stephen King, when they do knock it out of the park, like I said, the bases are loaded and, it's fucking a blowout. So, yeah, uh, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a damn thumbs up all the way. Um, Sleepaway Camp, I'm going to give a thumbs down just because the first movie is too problematic. It shouldn't have got sequels. And I refuse to watch the sequels. Um, what else is there? I don't really consider Jurassic Park horror. Well, Jurassic Park, yes, but the franchise, no. Um, Tremors, I'm gonna give a thumbs down because the first movie is a testament to awesome, and literally every fucking movie that came after it was just a goddamn joke. Not worth the shit at all. Species, I'll give a thumbs up. Um, even though it's 50-50, two good ones, two not as good. Again, the two good ones are good enough to elevate the franchise as a whole, even if the latter two aren't as good. None of them suck. It's just you got mediocre and then you got pretty good. So, yeah. What are some other franchises? Horror franchises. Saw. I'm going to give Saw a thumbs down. I fucking hate Saw. I hate the movie. I hate the premise. I hate the franchise. I hate the killer. I hate the concept. I hate everything about it. I do not enjoy Saw at all. Evil Dead. I'm torn. I like the first Evil Dead. I hate Evil Dead 2. I can't fucking stand it. I appreciate Army of Darkness, but I don't consider it horror, so I have to pull that one out of the franchise. Evil Dead 2013 is one of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. I've already seen it 3 times this year, and we're only in just barely April. And I only watched it for the first time last year, and it was an instant. I fell in love with it the first time I watched it. Um, and I have mixed feelings about Evil Dead Rise. I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I liked it enough that I'll probably rewatch it. But as a whole, I'm going to give the franchise a thumbs down, even though I love the first Evil Dead and I love Evil Dead 2013. Like I said, I got to pull Army of Darkness out of the franchise, um, which means that leaves us with Evil Dead 2 that I hate. And I hate it so much that it balances out how much I love the other two, which just leaves Evil Dead Rise, which isn't enough to elevate the franchise. So I'm giving Evil Dead a thumbs down as a franchise. It doesn't work for me. Um, what are some other ones? I don't consider RoboCop horror. I know some people do. Terminator, I don't consider that horror, although I know some people do. Same with Predator. Um, so I kind of skip over those. Um, I've never seen Creepshow. I have no interest in Creepshow. I've only seen the first two Candyman films, so I can't comment on Candyman as a franchise. Um, Critters. There are only 4 movies in the Critters 4 or 5 movies in the Critters universe. I'm gonna give it a thumbs up, even though I don't like any of the movies except for the second one. The second one is so goddamn good that it makes me forget that the rest of them even exist. So Critters 2 is a goddamn good movie. The rest of the Critters franchise can eat dirt, and that's just putting it nicely. Gremlins is a solid thumbs up because both movies are hits. Ghostbusters, even though that falls more under horror comedy, is a thumbs up because I love the entire franchise. There's not a dud in the series. I like some of them more than others, but I've loved all 4 of the Ghostbusters films. Um, yeah, a lot. Even Answer the Call. I love Answer the Call. I think people who hate on it have brain damage or malfunctions in their head. I don't know. Something wrong with them. Other than that, I don't know. What are some other franchises that are out there? Uh, that's all the ones I can think of. Oh, I guess I skipped over Scream, didn't I? All right. I'm gonna give Scream a thumbs down. I love the first one. I like either 4 or 5, and I have to be honest, I can't remember which one I like because I get them confused in my head, so I have to go back and rewatch both of them because I liked one and didn't like the other, but I can't remember which one it is. Because every time I listen to a podcast where somebody covers it, I'm like, wait a second, I thought that was Scream 4 or I thought that was Scream 5, and I get confused. I didn't like 6, I didn't like 2 and 3, so I'm gonna give Scream as a franchise. I'm still gonna give it a thumbs up just because Scream is a fucking game changer and worth every fucking every ounce of praise it gets. Um, I guess there's also Final Destination. I'm gonna give that one a thumbs up just because you're there for the kills and it delivers. What else do you want? And that's all the horror franchises I can think of. So last week I mentioned I was going to talk about Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs, and I don't really want to kick the can down the road again. So let's go ahead and dig into it. I don't know how deep I'm going to get into this because I could get very angry, especially because yesterday was Trans Day of Visibility and I got overwhelmed with fucking bigots being dipshit pieces of shit, and I don't need to deal with that today. Um, so let's just see how far I get without, you know, making my blood pressure go through the roof. So Buffalo Bill, if you're not familiar with Silence of the Lambs, is the serial killer in the movie that the FBI are hunting. Now, Buffalo Bill, even though we're going to refer to Buffalo Bill as Buffalo Bill because that's the name the character was given in the movie, we are going to refer to Buffalo Bill as female because she is transgender and she uh, was very definitively transgender. And here's why I'm going to argue that. It is stated in the film that Buffalo Bill went to 3 different gender clinics to get gender reassignment surgery, and was denied all 3 times. You don't do that unless you really want to change who you are. Now, I know Hannibal Lecter misdiagnosed Buffalo Bill as not being a true and we're using transgender. We're not using the outdated terminology that the film uses. Um, Based on his diagnosis of Buffalo Bill, he thinks Buffalo Bill is just hates himself, who he is, and I'm using he him here because that's what Lecter uses in the film, and he isn't a true transgender. Um, Except for here's the thing, he doesn't get a say in it. If Buffalo Bill says she's transgender, she's transgender. She's the only one that gets to decide if she's trans. Nobody else gets to tell her she is or isn't trans. Um, why the gender clinics denied her is beyond me, but knowing the history of how gender dysphoria has been recognized and treated by the medical community over the years, it doesn't surprise me because it used to be a lot harder to get gender reassignment surgery than it is today because, bigotry and misogyny rule the land and they didn't want trans women transitioning for whatever reason because, you know, uh, they either just believed that they were homosexual and they should just accept being homosexual, which they weren't, or just be okay with being a dude and, go get some pussy and you'll be fine. And that was the medical, diagnosis, like stop thinking you're a woman. We don't think that way anymore because we know better now. We have better science now, so we do understand gender ideology, not ideology, but gender identity better. I don't know why I said ideology. I'm getting tongue tied. We understand gender identity better now. That's the word I was looking for. And we understand gender dysphoria better now than we did back then. So now here's the complaint people have with Buffalo Bill being transgender. The criticism is Buffalo Bill is a psychopath who kidnaps women, overweight women, starves them so that their flesh becomes a little loose, kills them, skins them, and uses their flesh to sew together a female bodysuit that Buffalo Bill uses to satisfy her gender dysphoria so that she can present as female because she got denied gender reassignment surgery. So she's doing what she can, even though she's clearly psychotic. The argument goes this makes trans people look bad and violent and like perverts and blah blah blah. And so we should distance ourselves from Buffalo Bill and not identify her as transgender because that's problematic. However, I disagree with that. And I disagree with that vehemently because we have to accept one, it's fictional character. It's made up. The whole story is made up. None of it's real. None of it's based on reality. Inspired by Ed Gein, but this isn't the first horror villain inspired by Ed Gein. Um, so let's just push that aside. But also, we need to let people know, look, it's just a movie. Not all trans people are, you know, psychopathic serial killers. And we have to use this as a vehicle to have those discussions with people because nobody has ever watched Friday the 13th and said Jason Voorhees is on the autism spectrum, allegedly. So that means all autistics are serial killers. Nobody has ever watched um, fucking American Psycho and said, investment banker Patrick Bateman is a serial killer, so I guess all investment bankers must be serial killers. Nobody fucking does that. But when they see Buffalo Bill is a trans woman who's a serial killer, they're like, see, all trans women are serial killers. Fuck you. Fuck you if you say that or think that or believe that. That's why I believe we need to embrace Buffalo Bill's transgender um, identity and accept her as the female that she wanted to identify as, even though she probably didn't have the language to do so in her day like we do today. And that's all I have time for today because now I'm getting angry all over again.